to How to Make Films and Influence People.
Hey everybody, and welcome to How to Make Films and Influence People with Peter and Andrew, where we talk about our own approach to screenwriting and filmmaking. We discuss great works of cinema, and we blasphemously imagine how they could be remade. This week we'll be talking about Tokyo Story, giving an update on our screenplay project, and hear from you, the audience, with a nice question. But first of all, I'm Peter, successful filmmaker, film professor, and screenwriter. This is Andrew.
Screenwriter, filmmaker, but not a Japanese bathhouse owner by choice.
You know, there's always times for a second career. All right, so we wanted to update everybody on our screenplay project. That's going, it's going really well. We've had a couple different scheduling things and meetings in various places, but I think the progress is really coming along. Almost finished with that draft. We have, though, a question from a listener. This is coming in from Henry. Okay, Henry's basically saying, got a lot of questions about AI. How do you think AI is going to change the film industry? How are you using AI now? How is AI going to affect screenwriting? And I think it's a great question. It's a big question. So I think we're going to have a definitive answer for everyone right now. But what's your take on AI these days, Andrew?
Hold on, let me ask AI what I should say here. I've been using it for like brainstorming or coming up with some kind of ideas if I get stuck in a story, like what are some possibilities here? How could this maybe go? And like give me a bunch of ideas, and kind of using it as like almost like a writer's room to just bounce ideas off of and see what it comes back with. I very rarely use what it says, but sometimes it'll give you like an idea that sparks something. And you're like, oh, I could do something with that. Or that's a good lane to go down or follow that path a little bit. As far as writing a story, though, I don't think it's there yet. You know, maybe by tomorrow, but not yet.
I know it's so risky to say, oh, AI isn't good at this thing or that thing, because by tomorrow it could be. But it does seem to me like creative writing is not its strong suit.
No.
And that's what I've observed. The generative AI, when it comes to like video and pictures, is really interesting. I think that there's a lot that you can do with that. I think there's a bigger sort of like ethical question of what, how do you feel about AI? I guess I feel like, you can't put the horse back in the barn. And now that there is so much AI out there, I feel like it seems like you gotta figure out how to use it and make the most of it, and not just be upset that it exists or whatever. I think a lot of people, especially in artistic and creative fields, feel like their work has been stolen by AI, or they're being pushed out by AI, and a certain amount of that is true, but also, what are you going to do about it now? I guess that's my attitude.
Right. It's not going away. So you got to learn to live with it or to use it to your advantage somehow. And if it can't just do everything for you yet, at least it can do something. So I think it's worth looking into to see, how can this help me at all? Can this give me any edge? Because if you're not, then it's just a tool that's out there that everybody else is going to use.
I've tried making some things with generative AI in terms of video. And I made a short film. I actually played at a couple film festivals. I'll disclose that it was made with AI. But it was very rough. And it's hard to make video that you want. Like, it's hard to make an entire film with AI, because the things, it's amazing what it can do so easily, but it also then is almost impossible to get it to do exactly what you want it to do. And so that can be very frustrating. And I think from what I've seen so far, there's a lot of use in images that, things that could have been stock footage, things that could have been establishing shots, things that could have been crowd footage, things like that, explosions, battle scenes, those kind of things, which as an independent filmmaker, I think is really interesting, that there are a lot of possibilities that were not at all possible on a small budget before. Some of those kinds of shots, I think, are the things that AI does best. Whereas it seems to me, and I'm not a hater of AI. I'm trying to make it work, and I'm finding it very frustrating to have, uh, you know, consistent characters, have emotion, have, you know, people say the lines they're supposed to say. I feel like it's not there yet in terms of actually having scenes, and I definitely feel like it's not there yet because even when you see videos that are put out by AI companies, they're not showing in-depth character scenes. They're showing,
Hmm.
look how flashy and cool we can be. And I think that is where it is now. I don't know. And again, with AI, I don't know if these are things that for some fundamental reason, it's just going to be impossible for it to capture those human, consistent characters over the course of a longer scene, or if that's just tomorrow or next week that it gets to. But to me, right now, I'm trying to use it. I'm trying to see how it can be used, and it's very frustrating. So I guess I'm just trying to stay on my
It's
toes.
both. Right. Yeah, because it can't do everything you want it to do, but it can obviously do some things really well. And I think a lot of people have issues when like the big studios are using AI or some movie you watch, it's like, oh, they could have hired somebody to do that instead of having AI do it for you. But if you're like on your own and you want to just learn how to make a movie or something and you need help, then yeah, why not try it? If you're a big $1 billion studio, maybe hire somebody to do it instead. But I think there's ways you can use it in your life, to help you along your career path or whatever you want to do to make. So it's not just throw it out altogether, but don't just use it all the time for everything. So that's a really nuanced take, I think, right?
But I think that is the key to AI these days in general, which is I think if you're using AI, like in school, if you're using AI to cheat, then you're just cheating yourself. You're not learning anything, and you're
Hmm.
not really learning how to use AI. If you are taking AI and asking using AI as if you had a whole team of employees working for you, not somebody to do your homework for you, but a team of employees who could do all of these different things because you are asking more and more in-depth questions to get it to do stuff,
Right.
then I think you can really harness its power. But I think I guess I'm trying to come at AI not pretending it's not there and not just trying to get it to replace things that I already have, but trying to get it to do things that I couldn't have done before.
Right. Use it as a tool, not like a silver bullet. It can't solve every problem, but it can do some things. And if you can figure out what that is, it's going to help you out.
So AI saving us all, and then of course will inevitably destroy us all, and that's how it
Enjoy the
goes. But
ride.
thanks for the
Just
question.
enjoy the ride.
Now we have a chance to talk about.
What have you been watching? What have you been watching? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you form opinions about the people who made it?
So what have you been watching, Andrew?
This week I watched a documentary that my friend recommended to me, and it's on YouTube right now for free. It's called Listers. And it's a glimpse into extreme bird watching. So I know this sounds like the most exciting documentary you've ever heard of, but it actually is really well done. It's about these two brothers, and one day one of them is reading in a bird book, and he's like, "What would it be like to know every single bird in this book?" And so they decide to go down this path, and they figure out that there's this whole world of bird watchers and that you don't even know exists that exist right now. And they're like, we're going to try and, see what this is like. There's this competition every year to see who can see the most birds in the lower 48. So these two brothers, knowing nothing, decide we're going to try for that and see how many birds we can see in the next calendar year in the lower 48. And so it's actually pretty funny. They get into this world that they just know nothing about. They have all of these issues, but then they also interview people, and you kind of learn about this subculture that exists that's really interesting with these people that just have a whole lives built around this, about around bird watching and finding birds and where they're going to go. And these two brothers, they're a little I think they take things lightly. They make fun of a few things, but it's all done, I think, out of like respect, because they realize how difficult this really is, and like all the things that go into this. So by the end of the documentary, you kind of have a good sense of just how intense this world is. And then they don't break the record, but they do find a lot of birds, and it's really fun along the way. They do it in like a really fun way. The editing's really good, and they kind of just make jokes along the way. So I really enjoyed it. I think if you have YouTube, you should check it out. It's a really good movie.
For the
Documentary.
few people out there who have YouTube,
It's just for the few. You might have to sign up with an email. So if you don't have an email, maybe get one of those. That could be a good way.
start with some kind of digital device, a computer or phone, and then
Computer or
go from there.
phone. Yeah. So, but really
Okay,
enjoyed
Listers. Cool. I have not heard of
Mhm.
that.
it. Yeah.
I do have I know somebody who's a world-renowned what is it, ornithologist?
Oh,
And
really?
he's actually made his career of it now.
Oh, wow. I bet he knows this documentary and has opinions. You should ask.
It's probably like, oh, that's totally not how you do it. They're cutting
That's
out
not
all
how you
these
do it.
important things. Well, interesting. Great. Okay. I saw Crime 101, which is out in theaters or has been out in theaters. It's a it's just sort of like a crime movie. Some people would call it like a garbage crime movie. But it's like Chris Hemsworth is a very principled thief who robs from jewelers or like jewel delivery, and I guess he'll rob other things, but so he does these robberies. He doesn't hurt people. He does things in a very smart, leaves no trace, and he always does them on the like just off of the 101 freeway in LA. So it's like it's Crime 101, but it's also, what the 101 freeway. That's a little cute for a title. I don't know.
Right. So
It works, but it's a
both
little
ways.
cute. And I would say the movie is it's perfectly fine. I thought, and I thought it was like it delivers on what you kind of expect it to. It doesn't challenge you. It is basically exactly the movie you thought it would be. And if you compare it to a movie like Drive with Ryan Gosling, and Nicholas Winding Refn directed, I think that is a very similar kind of story that then takes it in such a more interesting, challenging, provocative kind of direction. And Crime 101 is like just the dumb man's version of Drive.
So the premise is he's doing good crimes, like crimes that people
they're
that deserve it.
crimes. He's robbing, but he's not hurting people.
Oh, okay. Just kind of like stealing from the rich, like a Robin Hood type thing.
He's stealing from the rich and giving to himself. So it's like half of Robin Hood, but but part of the thing is like, okay, but then something goes wrong. And so
Right.
now somebody did get hurt, and what is he going to do about that? And then there's the cop who's trying to investigate, and does the cop have sort of the kind of cop who's going to catch this guy is the kind of cop who's also going to have a grudging respect for the way that he's going about his crimes. And
Yeah.
and so it's playing with that. It's it's perfectly fine. I think that you could do a lot worse. If you're on a plane and it comes on, I would check it out. That's how I would say Crime 101.
Perfect plain movie. That's good. Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Barry Keoghan. It's got some good cast in there. Halle Berry's in it. There you
They
go.
all do a good job. I mean, I hope they got paid well. I think it's a perfectly
fine movie.
it's a perfectly fine movie, and frankly, that is better than most movies. So I
That's true.
endorse it as long as you know what you're getting into. Listers, Crime 101, ones to check out, different moods, but you're not awful movies.
Hey, Peter, what time is it?
11:47.
Wrong. It's lime time.
That's not a real time, Andrew.
It is now, thanks to Duncan and Bliss's newest flavor, Lime Time. It's like regular lime, but with more time.
What does that even mean?
Nobody knows, but it tastes incredible.
Tangy, creamy, and scientifically proven to make you 23% more punctual.
That statistic sounds made up.
Everything about Dunkin' and Bliss sounds made up, but the flavor is real.
So Lime Time ice cream can actually slow down time itself?
It can't alter time, but it can alter your taste buds.
Dunkin' and Bliss Lime Time, because it's always the right time for an absurd amount of ice cream.
So now we get into the film of the week. And Andrew, what can you tell us about Tokyo Story?
Tokyo Story, 1953, directed by Yasujiro Ozu. The elderly Shikushi and his wife Tomi take the long journey from their small seaside village to visit their adult children in Tokyo. Their elder son, Koichi, a doctor, and their daughter, Shigi, a hairdresser, don't have much time to spend with their aged parents, and so it falls to Noriko, the widow of their younger son who was killed in the war, to keep her in laws company. And if that doesn't sound riveting, it might not be. This is a slow, I would say, introspective, kind of a family drama of a movie. There's not a lot of action. It's mostly filming people in a room. But it's also more than that in a way. I did find this movie very interesting and engaging, but I do think it demands a lot of the viewer. It's the type of movie that you have to go in reading the subtext, what's going on between the lines. When people say something, what do they actually mean underneath? Because it's not just very out straightforward given to you. So it really requires a lot of attention when you're watching this. Is that something that you felt when you were watching it?
It definitely takes a lot of attention, and I think it rewards that attention. But it definitely, I mean, just hearing what the plot of the movie is, you think, okay, that's the first part of the sentence, and then the plot starts, right? Nope,
Right.
Nope, that was the plot. Okay,
Yeah.
it's like, they're coming to Tokyo, and then there's an earthquake. Nope, no earthquake. Oh, they uncover secret family mysteries. Nope, it's just the family spending time. And I was thinking about this. I don't think the kind of person who loves Crime 101 is going to love Tokyo Story, and probably vice versa. But although I like them both, but I think, the kind of person who's going to listen to this podcast, unless they're just such huge devoted fans of ours that they don't ever miss an episode. I think if you want to hear about Tokyo Story, you probably don't want to hear how Tokyo Story is slow and boring. And so I don't think. I think that my personal taste of what I normally watch is not like Tokyo Story. But I really wanted to look at this and say, what is so powerful about this? Let me not just rule this out as that's not the most fun movie that I watch all of the time, but really say what is unique and special about this. And if you spend the time to focus on this, what are you getting out of that? And I think it really is a rich experience.
Right. There's a lot of details to this. All of these characters feel like real people, and there's this something going on underneath everything that if you really let yourself, you'll get into this story. So I would say when I started watching this, the first maybe 20, 30 minutes, I was very confused because they throw a lot of people at you, a lot of different places, and then it takes some time to figure out who everybody is and how they're related to each other. But the basic premise is this older couple, they come to Tokyo, which is a long way for them. So they live in Japan, but they live far away. They come to Tokyo. They're staying with their kids who live in Tokyo, and their kids are kind of put out by it, even though they're not saying it outright. But they kind of feel like, oh, this is kind of a burden. I've got work. I'm busy, and they just don't have the time to do anything with their parents where they're there. And so it falls to their daughter-in-law, which took me a minute to figure out that's who that was, Noriko. And she treats them as if they are her parents. She treats them very well. She goes out with them. She lets them stay at her house. She's just really nice and friendly and welcoming to them. And you kind of see this juxtaposition between the two of the person who's not blood related, which they mention multiple times, and the people who are blood related. And there's kind of this exploration of the themes of as you grow up and your kids grow up, and people look on the outside, look at your kids and they say, wow, they're very well adjusted. They've got great jobs. They're doing really well. But to the parents personally, you can feel there's some pain. There's some, they don't quite want to be with us or spend time with us. And the parents eventually just want to go home because there's just nothing for them there. And so I feel like that's less of a story or less of a point they're trying to make, and more of an exploration of just ideas, an exploration of what does this mean? What does it feel like? Without telling you, here's the moral of the story. Because I don't know that there is one necessarily, but they do explore a lot of ideas in this.
I think that this is such an interesting look into growing up, family life, and the fact that it's
Hmm.
not there aren't these huge hidden secrets and skeletons in the closet. I mean, the father used to drink a lot, and that was something. And he goes out drinking and brings back his drinking buddies, and
Hmm.
that's sort of like one of the biggest moments of the movie, maybe. But I think that it's not like that's a oh everything changes now. That's just
Right.
one small part of the bigger story. And to me, I think the fact that it is kind of realistic and slow paced made me reflect on just these relationships. And there is something about if you can look at a movie and say, well, that's a crazy skeleton in the closet, so that's what the problem is with that family.
Hmm.
Here it doesn't really have that, and so it makes you sort of think about your own family maybe. And I think of that a lot. I have kids, I have parents, and what is that relationship like? And I think of that as somebody who I had a great childhood. I have very fond memories of that family growing up, and that's not the relationship that I have with my parents now. I would say I have a good relationship with my parents now for this stage of life,
Hmm.
but that's not the relationship that I had when I was 10 or when I was 5. And uh and I think those changing relationships is just
Right.
an inevitable part of life. It's not that somebody messed up and that somebody is a bad parent or a bad child. And I think that is part of the anti-drama of this movie is kind of
Right.
exploring that this is part of life, and it doesn't mean that anybody messed up.
That's a good way to put it, the anti-drama of it, because there's no one is to blame in this. It seems everybody has a good reason for what they're doing. No one's painted as necessarily the bad guy. I think there are people who do things where you're like, well, that wasn't the best choice, but it's not like that's the whole movie. It's just these little things that feel very real, and it's almost impossible to watch this and not think about how this applies to your life, because at some point, no matter where you are in life, you're in one of these stages. There's the grandkids, there's the kids, there's the parents slash grandparents, and you're somewhere in that range when you watch this movie. So I think it's very almost unintentionally, without noticing, you're going to just think about your own life. How does this apply in my life? And for a movie to do that like this does so subtly, I think is really, it's really powerful in that way, that the way that he's able to just kind of seep into your memories, your thoughts without overtly trying to do so. I don't know. I think there's a real skill to that Ozu does here.
When I think of my own family, well, I remember having young kids, and I've got 4 kids of varying ages, which I think it's very different if you have like one child or two very closely aged children. Having a span of children, so I'll have I'll have a high schooler and a kindergartner or whatever, or roughly speaking. I actually won't. High school and a first grader. Anyway, but like that's a big span of age. But when I think
Hmm.
of like as a parent, I remember what it was like to have young children, like preschool children, and only that age. And they won't even remember that really. That isn't even part of their memory of their family experience. But that is a big part of like when I think about being a parent. And then, there are these different stages along the way that are like, I don't know, maybe the elementary school years is one big stage of family life, and the high school
Hmm.
years are another stage of life. When you think of your family growing up, what like if you were to capture your family in amber, like Jurassic Park, you capture them in amber. What
I
age are you when you think of like this is the classic version of my family?
think I automatically go to like middle school, maybe early high school, maybe a little before, somewhere between 12. I don't know. What age do you pick?
I see. I would go with like third or fourth grade. Like I think
Okay.
middle school, high school, I was
Are
branching
you
out
the
a little bit
oldest or
more.
youngest?
I'm the middle of three.
Okay. I wonder if that's why. I'm the oldest. So I don't really have siblings until, a little
Oh,
older. I wonder
interesting.
if that depends on part of it too.
I bet that would affect it. And so it then is anyway. This just it. I think that this is part of the movie that you reflect on your own experience, and that
Hmm.
I think if there was a stronger, more dramatic conflict, you would be focusing on that. But here, it leaves you to meditate and reflect, and I think both on, am I being a good child, am I being a good parent, but also just on the flows of life, and that you like, that is just the natural way of things.
When you think of like the conflict of the story, there's not so much of a conflict here, like a direct conflict, as it's just little conflicts. Everything in this movie just seems like maybe it's a slight nuisance, a slight inconvenience. It's a little bit of an issue, but nothing is like this is the main issue that this movie is dealing with. It just feels like it's all just family stuff, and none of it's that big of a deal, but also it is a big deal because it's family stuff. It's not life or death, but also it kind of is, because they do have a few moments of this where, so they have Noriko, which is the daughter-in-law. Her husband died in the war, so this is post World War II, and they tell her, you should get remarried, and that's something for her. And then the mother of this, the grandmother of the mother, the main one, she ends up dying at the end of this movie, and that comes on kind of sudden, and you see how the kids take it, and they all take it a little different, and some of them have issues with how the other sibling takes it. And so these issues of, I mean, death in there. There's the post-war Japan is there. There's living in, getting jobs and all of this. But really, the core of it is just family. And I don't know how you make a movie like that work. I wouldn't know how to write this movie. Like if you had me, okay, write a copy of this or your version of this, I think it'd be very difficult. I just don't know how you get this to work as a movie overall. And yet it does work really well. I think it just takes a different type of mind or a different type of person to see this, where I would have a very hard time finding the story in this, finding how to film this.
Yeah, I think I would not do a good job of this, because I would either just feel like nothing was happening, or I would want to, find more plot to it, and I would want to just get into, some more plot and conflicts going on, and I just don't think I could make something so slow and contemplative, and that kind of thing. Do you think that this needs to be Japanese? Is there something inherently and uniquely Japanese about it, or is it just a universal family story?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking if you had this as like an American movie, how it would work. I think you could do it. I do think the themes of this, like there is in Japanese culture, it seems like respect is a really big issue, and there's very much a respect your elders. And I don't think those themes really play as well in the States or even in Western cinema very much. But for this movie in particular, I do think that they're playing off the idea of you should respect your elders, and that Noriko, the daughter-in-law who's not blood related, is showing much more respect than even the kids are, and there's something to that. And it seems she seems to be like the hero if you had one in the story, or like the person that you would look to as a good example in this. Um, and so maybe there's something with that in particularly, but a family drama like this, I think could work in any culture. I think it would play differently though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think some of my instincts, I think, are also reflective of American culture, and I think that an American version
Hmm.
of this just would be more drama, conflict heavy, and I think I think the truths of the family don't seem necessarily uniquely Japanese. I think the approach to storytelling maybe is. I think that there's a resentment, or there are challenging feelings that come up when you're talking about your own parents. And I think you
Hmm.
think of, like, there's so much weight of what were my parents' expectations of me. Is my parents slowing down? They're not the person I remember them, and that's hard for me to be around. I think that there are things like that just adds so much weight to interactions with your own actual parents. Whereas for her, she doesn't have that, and in fact, she is a connection to her deceased husband, or they are a connection for her to her deceased husband. And so I think, like,
Hmm.
I think she does do a better job of, connecting with them and spending time with them, but I think also that relationship is so different.
I think that the way that they play with those relationships, I think, is intentional because they say multiple times, you know, she's not technically part of the family, but it does feel like she is, and they all kind of treat her as if she is. But then there's also this idea of she's going to get married, remarried someday, and she's just not going to be as much a part of this family as she is now. And there's that kind of the thought of that in the future. Just like there's the thought of the parents eventually dying in the future. What are we going to do? And the mom does eventually die. The mom says at one point, I don't know if I'm going to see you grow up, to her grandkid. I don't know if I'm ever going to come back to Tokyo. There's that thought. And they bring up all these ideas that as you age, that you have to think about. And, you know, is this the last time? Will this ever happen again? Getting everybody together, it doesn't happen until the mother dies at the end. That's the only time all the kids are together. And so I think that it's showing how a family ages, grows, develops, and also somehow making it interesting. And that's the part that I can't figure out how he does this is why is this still engaging when talking about it? It just doesn't sound interesting. It sounds like, oh yeah, that's just real life. And it feels like real life. But for some reason, it's very, like, it is a engaging and rewarding film.
What did you think of the visual style of the film? Because it's very distinctive, and I think that plays into how the actual story connects with the audience. But what did you think of that?
I noticed, so every shot is static. The camera doesn't move. I think I noticed the camera move once in the whole movie, maybe more times, but generally speaking, it's just a shot and then the actors move across the screen. They move inside the scene. And there always feels like there's a lot of depth to these shots where he's framing it so that there's something in the foreground, middle, and background. And so you feel like you're getting a lot of depth with the shot without the camera doing anything. It feels very traditional, old school style of filming, but it also represents the story so well because it is static. It's showing this moment in time, and it's not trying to take away from what's going on in the moment. It's not trying to make it seem more interesting than it is, and it's not trying to take away, I feel like, the focus from the family to the shot or the camera movement in any way. But I think it worked really well, and it's very beautiful to look at. Every shot, it's almost like you almost feel like in a sitcom or like a animated show where it's like, this is the shot of the living room and it just doesn't change. And it feels like when you go to this room, this is the shot. It's not changing. That's the shot. They do, you know, some close-ups and some over the shoulder, but mostly it's just, he has the shot. It's a great looking shot and it works. But it does feel slow.
Yeah, I think the composition, it's so striking. To me, that signals that this is going to be a different experience. That I think if you had the same story with a more conventional Hollywood, shot choice and editing choices, like then it would feel like you were missing something. But I think having it be such a distinctive visual style, for one thing, I think there's a lot of beauty, and the slowness of the static shots fits with the slowness of the story. But I think also just signaling this is different than what you're used to, I think is, and or to me that worked as getting me in the headspace of the movie a lot better. And it's interesting how you have these static shots. They're pretty low to the ground. I think the idea is like if you were sitting on the floor looking at the scene, and that framing, there's often like a frame within a frame, that it's like even within the shot we are reminded that the characters are framed within something, and it adds this depth, but it also adds this constant reminder that we are looking in at them and that we're not being thrust right into the action. We are observing them. And I think that adds a lot to it.
You feel like you're an observer. That is true. That feeling comes across by the way that he's shooting this, the way it's framed. You don't feel like you're part of the family, but you do feel like you're a fly on the wall, like you're observing this family from a distance, kind of, while also being there. It's an interesting because you're not like in the middle of it, but you're still in it. So yeah, the way he did that's very interesting how it works.
Yeah, it's like we're watching them, but this hasn't been shot or edited for your enjoyment. We are we are just peeking in on them.
This isn't for you. This is all about them. The focus is them. Yeah.
There's a film called The Boss of It All by Lars von Trier, and it's interesting because Lars von Trier always makes these very edgy, sometimes like brutally sad or very disturbing films. But The Boss of It All is a comedy, and it's funny. It's like a very
Hmm.
I really like it, but it's intentionally shot. He had like a computer hooked up to his camera, and so it's sort of randomly choosing the composition for each shot, as opposed to
Uh,
any human deciding what the composition should be. And it's a really interesting,
huh.
this is just an example of a different approach to shot, like how the cinematography can look in a really out there way. But you'll have a whole scene where we're just seeing one person's shoulder, and that's taking up the whole scene, or where people's heads are cut off as they're talking. But it actually it still works because the story is strong,
Uh-huh.
and it just puts you in sort of a different mode. Not necessarily, like, I think in that case you couldn't defend that those shots are the best shots for the story, but I think the fact that they are so unusual puts you in a different place as a viewer. And
Hmm.
I think sort of a similar thing here with Ozu, that I think he's a lot more deliberate, and I think the shots are often very well composed or beautiful or just have a lot of depth to them. But I think that intentionality really puts you in a certain frame of mind as a viewer.
It really sets the stage for what you're going to go through, what this movie is. And I was even thinking about the movie we watched last week, Jaws, with Spielberg, and in all of his shots, there's a lot of camera movement, and the camera moves very intentionally around people, with people. There's quick cuts. There's a zoom in. There's a lot of like moves with the camera that Spielberg does that work very well in Jaws, and it's just so different compared to this, where there's hardly any movement, if any at all. And yet, these both these movies are very well made, even though the styles are so different. So I think there's something to be said about that. Of there's not one right way to shoot a movie. It's really, what are you trying to say?
Tokyo Story, often mentioned as one of the greatest films of all time. I believe the 2012 Sight and Sound list had it as the best film of all time. But it's certainly up there on lists. How does it rank for you? Did it is it overrated, fairly rated? What's your take on it?
I guess for me, I would say it's not my favorite movie, but I feel like if you're in the mood for this type of a movie, if we're going to say what's the best movie that is this style or that deals with these issues, these topics, I don't know that you can find a better one. I think this is done very well. The quality, the it's very rewarding um, for this style and this type of movie. I don't know if there's anything better necessarily, but as for a favorite for me, I wouldn't put this up there. As I'm not rewatching this anytime soon. I'm sure there are people that resonate more strongly with this. I know there are.
I do think it's a very powerful movie. I think that there's a difference between greatest films of all time and films that you watch the most.
Hmm.
Good Will Hunting is both, but
One of the rare few.
one of the rare few. But I would say, Tokyo Story, I do think that it's a powerful story. I mean, it's a powerful story. It's not that much of a story, but it's powerful themes. It's powerful
Yeah,
ideas that you sort of like soak up as you're watching it. But it's hard to recommend it, in the sense that, like, what it's hard to even describe what it is. It's
right.
you know sort of some family start to say family drama in
It's not
1950s
that.
Japan. It's like there's no drama. It's just
Yeah.
a family in
It's just the family.
1950s Japan.
Yeah, you got to watch it to get it. So it's really hard to say. I don't know.
I almost think that this is the kind of film that you need to rate very highly. Like,
Hmm.
you need to sort of overrate it so that people will watch it. Because if you just said it's good and then you say what the plot is, people would be like, I can find some other good
I'll skip it.
films that sound more interesting. I think if you
Right.
say this is amazing and you then describe what the plot is, people are like, I don't quite
Really?
get why that would be amazing, but I guess I'll give it a chance if you're saying it's a great movie. And then I think giving it a chance will be rewarded. but it
Right.
is a tricky one of how do you get yourself or other people to actually sit down and watch it.
Right. That's a good point. It's a very good movie. It's worth the watch. But if you told somebody about the movie, you wouldn't be able to convince them it is. It has to go on word like it's worth it. Just give it a shot. But
You
it's
need to
very
like
hard to
strap
explain.
people down like Clockwork Orange, just have them
Yeah.
watch Tokyo Story, not be able to close their eyes.
They're like, you'll get it if you just watch it. It's so unique though. Like there's not many movies like this. I think I've seen another Ozu, I think it was late spring, that I also enjoyed in the same way as I enjoyed this one, where I don't know that I'm going to watch it again anytime soon. It's really, you have to put yourself in it. You have to take the effort to watch it and figure it out, but it's worth it at the end. So you're not always in the mood for that, but you got to watch these movies every now and then. You can't just ignore these.
Yeah, it can't all be Crime 101.
It can't all be that. I
Okay,
mean,
but
it could all be, Goodwill Hunting, but other than that, I don't know if there's any movie we want to copy all the time.
I mean, there are 24 hours in a day. I can only watch Good Will Hunting maximum 11 times a day. So
That's it.
I've got room for one more movie.
One more movie.
All right, so let's take this now to
How would you remake it if you had to? If the studios backed the truck up and paid you, what would you do?
okay. So if we were asked by the crass, terrible Hollywood studio to remake Tokyo Story, and we're going to do it as a family film, it's an interesting one because it is already so much about a family, but
Right.
this is a Hollywood studio asking us to make it as a family film. So we're thinking a little bit more for an American family audience. How do you remake Tokyo Story?
Right. Because there's no themes or topics that are really off limits to families here. It is about a family. And I don't think it has been remade anywhere that I know of. But my mind went to make it more friendly for kids, to have kids be more excited, engaged in this. And I went to the Miyazaki films, the something like Spirited Away. If you had this animated in the anime style, the Japanese style of animation, and you had a similar story, I would maybe put the grandkids more front and center and see it from their perspective a little more, how their grandparents come and go, how they relate to their parents. I think you could make this a little more exciting for kids to watch and still have it meander like it does, have it just explore themes without having too much of a story, like a real direct story in it. But that specific style of animation, I think, would work well for this.
Yeah, I think that could work. I guess I was, debating what is the movie at its core,
Right.
and is there a way to do that in a family, Hollywood family version that isn't just totally selling that out. And I guess what I thought was, again, if we focus on the grandkids a little bit more, if we do give them a little bit more of a plot, there's some kind of adventure that they're on. I don't know if they lost a toy and they're trying to find that toy, or there's some kind of mission that they're on. They're trying to do some kind of experience that is just a little bit of a kid-centric plot to hang your hat on. And then we are observing the relationships between their parents and their grandparents in the background. And so we are like, that would be how I would be like faithful to this film, but
Mhm.
still giving it more of like a kid-focused plot line to go off of. So something that, the kids are some kind of plot line, just so that we can feel a little bit more in the traditional 3-act structure kind of thing.
Right.
But meanwhile, the slow build, meditative, like parents and grandparents relationship is just there in the background.
Yeah, it does seem like you need to get the grandkids, the younger kids, more involved in this, because even though it's family, it's appropriate for anybody in a family. It feels adult in just the themes that are brought up and the way it's delivered. So you would need to get younger kids even slightly interested in this. I think it'd be a hard time, like to have my kids, even my older kids. I don't know that they could get into this movie. I think it'd be tough.
I think like a smart kid could understand The Godfather, but like I don't think
Hmm.
that there's any question of intelligence that makes you understand Tokyo's story. Like I think it's a having gone
Right.
through more life events and seen those relationships change over
It's a
time.
maturity thing.
It's a maturity thing.
Yeah.
I just don't think a kid like could get it, you know, in a meaningful way. And so if you're going to make it for kids, I think you have to change the plot a little. All right, but what about
Right.
the no budget or super high budget version?
This feels like it's an easy no budget or low budget film. Most everything just takes place. It's just people in a room. If you needed to go lower budget, you could cut out the exploring Tokyo for the day, which I think might be the biggest thing. There's maybe more locations than you need. You could cut this down to fewer locations. I don't think that'd be that difficult. I was more interested in the idea of if you had a bigger budget, could you make this better in any way? And the only thing that I could come up with is maybe when they do explore Tokyo, you get more cool scenes of the city at that time because you don't see much. It's all from a bus, which I think is intentional as well. You spend time with these people. I would love to see just a shot of the city at some point to give me a bigger perspective of where we are. And then also, like at the bathhouse, I feel like you could do some cool things if you go all the way there. It's just kind of them at the shore. I don't know. I think if you had a bigger budget, maybe you could get some more interesting shots of the surrounding. Although, again, maybe that goes against what his intention was for this movie. So I don't know. It feels like it is what it wants to be, but maybe there's some areas you could go bigger on.
Yeah, I had two thoughts on this. One on the no budget, one on the higher budget. But on the no budget, I think that there's a tricky. Not that this is an idea for the remake, but it's an interesting thing reflecting on this. That those static shots, I think that is a. It's interesting that could work for not a remake of this in a no budget way, but as a style to make low budget films. There's a lot that could open up if you shot that way. I think that a lot of low budget filmmakers don't think super creatively about how to use the camera in a way that fits like their restraints. And I think that could be an interesting thing to play with. So not remaking this film, but just thinking of if you took an Ozu approach to any kind of other story, would that work? And I think that there are a lot of stories that it wouldn't because it would just like this is a slow paced story and it's a very real story. And so if you tried to have a high concept American, you know, more dramatic movie with these static shots, it would feel like, I feel like it would just feel deflated. But I think that if you had a really thoughtful, you know, talking heavy kind of story, it would be interesting to approach it with this kind of deliberate camera choice instead of just trying to do conventional coverage like a Hollywood movie. And so I think that would be an interesting thing to explore if you had the right kind of story. But also, what I think we touched on with Ozu and with the way these shots are framed, it's not just that he doesn't move the camera. It's that he has spent a lot of time figuring out exactly what should be in front of the camera when he doesn't move it. And I think that if you just set up the camera and don't move it and then proceed as normal, it's going to be a terrible looking shot because you haven't done the work to think of how it's composed.
Yeah. He's almost composing it like a painting. Like it looks very intentional where every piece of furniture is, every person in there, it's all framed very like he wants it. So yeah, you can do that cheaply, but that requires a lot of skill.
Yeah. And I do think that is something that no budget filmmakers, you have to think about what can you do cheaply? Like there's no excuse for not being smart or not putting in effort just because you don't have money. I mean, maybe you just don't have the wherewithal to do that. But if your only burden is that you don't have money, there are things that you can do to get around that, or there are things that you can do in the absence of money. And so I think that is worth thinking about. Right. My thought, though, went to the super high budget version of this. And I just thought, you know, if we're being paid to remake this movie, then I'm going to do it as there's a giant earthquake. There's we take the parents come to visit Tokyo, and that's the day that there's a giant earthquake in Tokyo. And so it's going to be these relationships, but at the same time, the world is collapsing. How are we going to get out of this? But all of that layered on top of the difficult family relationships. And I don't think that would be better, but but I think that that would be an idea of how you could remake it.
You could definitely pitch that. I think somebody would get on board with that. Even if you did like a World War II, like they're getting bombed on that day or something. There's a lot you could do in that time period that would add a lot more drama to it in a different way. Yeah, like you said, it would not be the same movie though. This wouldn't work.
No. All right, and then what about a TV series? Either an ongoing series or like a 10-part Netflix series. How would you approach this?
Yeah, because there's just no real story for where this goes. I think it's hard to pitch this as a series. I was thinking what you do is maybe 5 or 6 episodes, and you have an episode about that's kind of focused on each kid, where you get their relationship with their parents, get more of the background of their lives. They all have these jobs or they live somewhere in particular. And I think there's 5 if you count the daughter-in-law, and get like more of the backstory. And then you have it keep moving forward in the sense that the parents are coming or whatever. And you kind of explore those dynamics, maybe more between the parents and each child individually. And then you can still have it end how it does, where the mom dies at the end and they all come together. Um, and I think you'd have to add more storylines to this to make that work. But if you just kept it kind of a shorter series, like a 6 episode series where it's all about the family and the kids' relationships, I think you could do something there where you kind of keep the essence of it a little bit, but open it up a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I went with a very different idea, which I was thinking, what if we take this story and do it like this is one, we shorten it down a little. We make this an hour-long episode of a
Mm.
6-part series that is looking each episode at a different family. And like we're looking at post-war Japan,
Yeah.
and we're looking at what does life look like in post-war Japan. And this is one reflection on, multi-generation family and how that looks. We do another episode that's looking at, person all about somebody coming back from war and how that affects them. We look at somebody else, in a place that's just been destroyed by bombing and whatnot, how that looks for them. But focusing on each episode, a different story looking at life in post-war Japan, and this would just be one of those. And I think that I think that
That
could
could
be
be a
an
fun,
interesting take.
yeah, I think that'd actually be a fun idea. And you just have a different family every episode. That could work. And I'm sure some episodes would be better than others. You'd have your favorite, but you could do that. And I think that'd be a cool exploration of just the themes around that, the ideas.
Yeah. All right. Would any of those be better than the film?
I would have to say no, most likely. I think that's really hard to take what this film is and put it in any other form. But I think that there's potential there. I don't know that anybody's remade this, but this style of movie, I would be interested in seeing an American take on, for an American family, how that would play out this style. I think that'd be interesting to see a modern day version of that. But, this film as is great, you know.
Yeah, I think the film is great, and I think we have to say that it's great so that people will give it a chance, because it's
We
hard
would
to
lose all
sell it just on
respect.
its own log line.
Yes. So,
But I do think it's great. I think, and I do, like in general, I'm inclined to say if you could take, rich ideas and put them on a little bit more plot friendly kind of story, I think that works better a lot of the time. So like the earthquake version, this is a disaster movie with dense family relationships. In general, I like that approach. I think though that this movie is just so like that would be so defeating the purpose of this movie, because
mhm,
it really isn't about difficult family choices. It's about sort of soaking in the reality of family life.
right.
And I think having too much drama really would undermine that. So
Hmm.
I think this movie does what it does as well as could possibly be done.
Does what it does. You like it or you don't. I don't. It's worth it though. I'd give it a watch, even if us pitching this, you're like, I'm still not on board with this. I think you just gotta give it a try. It's worth it.
I think we're a little bit damning it with faint praise, but I think it's legitimate high praise.
Yeah.
But it's you got to be in
It's
the right
unique.
frame of mind. But I think it will reward that. And so there we have it, Tokyo Story. Thanks for joining us for this episode of How to Make Films That Influence People. Check us out at howtomakefilmspodcast.com, and we'll see you next time.